On this episode of the show, I have with me Jay Vijayan. He is founder and CEO of Tekion. We're going to be talking about tariffs and tech resiliency within, well, the auto dealership industry. We're going to be talking about how modern digital infrastructures and AI do provide a competitive advantage and how that's happening. We're going to talk about supply chain and the impact to it, and parts and maintenance when it comes to how dealers are able to see into that data and better anticipate things. And we're going to talk about the dealer experience and how things can improve and how they are improving. Jay, thanks for taking the time.
Sure, Amir. Nice to meet you. Looking forward to our conversation.
Absolutely. Likewise. I guess before we start, could you tell everyone what the company does?
Yeah. So Tekion delivers end-to-end automotive retail platform. So we are a SaaS, software as a service platform for automotive retailers, automotive manufacturers, and also we have an ecosystem marketplace.
Absolutely. Awesome. Awesome. So I guess we want to talk about really two different directions. One, talking about tech within the resiliency and talk about AI within the space, and also talk about tariffs, because I think that kind of leads to some of that supply chain conversation and really how companies are going to be dealing with these shifts in global macros. I guess to start with, in case people are not aware of the vertical and they're not familiar with what the industry looks like and how modern it is. I mean, automotive, retail, infrastructure. Give us an overview, a little bit of background in terms of where do these companies sit in the maturity of technology?
Great question. Again, see, as a consumer, we may have run into, and I personally have run into this quite a few times, even before starting Tekion many years ago. It is a full spectrum, and to most part, I'll tell you what it's a full spectrum in the sense there are systems that are literally, when you say green screen, character-based green screen, there are a character-based green screen still being used in dealerships. Even yesterday, someone was telling me they were surprised to see when they, peeped into seeing the sales agent's screen, they were using a green screen. So that is the one side of the spectrum. And yes, people do use AI tools potentially, to have AI chatbots and everything. So it is a full spectrum. But the big thing is the system of record where they truly do the entire transaction is quite antiquated and fragmented. So that's exactly what we had, set to do is transform that. It's not one piece. Automotive is something we're going to talk quite a bit into detail. People, perceive sometimes just the one small piece of the big puzzle. You can't solve the puzzle by creating a pretty website. You can create a pretty shopping site. You can create a pretty nice-looking chat engine. That's why people in automotive dealerships or automotive manufacturers, cannot use Shopify to sell cars, right? I'm making it simple, and nothing against Shopify. It's a phenomenal tool for small businesses, right, to most part. But the reason people couldn't sell that is because of the complexity decades-old complexity that exists in the automotive industry that needs to be solved. It can be solved through, technology platform by bridging it. So our mission has always been, how do we solve it comprehensively? Not create a pretty dealer website or a OEM website or an AI chatbot. It has to be a true platform taking the journey end to end, and that's what we have set to do. So answer your question, yes, it's a full spectrum of antiquated 50-year-old system to AI chatbots, and also there is massive amount of fragmentation in between. So the goal for us is, how do we make it seamless, entire consumer journey?
Absolutely. I guess I'm going to jump in to what I thought would be an ending question, but I'll ask you earlier. And I'm curious because Tesla came out, several years ago, and they presented a very interesting model of the experience, buying a car, or, test driving a car, getting through that, and people really saw the difference between traditional automotive and Tesla. Has that been an impetus in modernizing and having better infrastructure to provide some similar type capabilities to consumers?
Yes, I think it's a great question, right? So the thing is, it's not about, I know people kind of, again, same thing, see one view saying like, oh, no, no, you need to go sell direct to consumers if you need to solve the problem, or don't need to have a brick and mortar store. You can sell everything online. So people see one perspective, one view of it. The comprehensive view is give consumers the choice and a seamless experience. When I say choice, consumers have to have the freedom, and we all want it today. You see, the way you shop or the way I shop versus my, 20-year-old daughter would shop will be very different. So that's where software comes into picture. So basically, someone would decide I want to do everything online, but all I want to do is enjoy the experience of going and picking up my car. Someone would feel like I want to go enjoy the experience first, do a test drive, then without any pressure from anyone, I want to go home and finish my, deal, sign the documents digitally on my phone, on my iPad, doesn't matter, whatever is easier for them. So delivering that experience is the end goal. So that was the thing that, when you abstract it out, Tesla was working to deliver the best experience for the consumer. But if you put the other pieces together, they still have brick and mortar stores. They have stores, no doubt. So what they kind of solved is how do you give the best experience for consumers? And to answer your question, exactly, technology can bridge that. It's not about the question of having a brick and mortar store or not. The answer is yes, you do need a physical location. The reason why Apple still has a lot of stores and keep opening stores is because consumers want to go and touch and feel the product. But the question is, at what part of their journey? You need to give them their choice. Whenever they want to do it, they can do the research online, go, touch base on the product, or they can touch base on the product and then go do everything online. So that part has been completely missing in the automotive world and until Tekion. And we are first time, bridging that journey, solving that problem. Doesn't matter where the consumer starts their journey, where they end their journey. You connect, be it digital, be it physical, you connect their entire journey, then you give what consumers, really need or what they're expecting.
I guess when it comes to, and you mentioned obviously Apple and their devices are. I don't know if we really care where the parts come from, right? We in the end
Yeah.
traditionally we've gotten the product, we're happy, it's a small package. We don't worry about those. With cars though, we they have to be shipped, on a boat, on a train, on a cargo bed. They need to be moved. They're huge, right? And I think a lot of times at some point, even as I think this is more of a tip the iceberg analogy. There's we see that little bit at the top of that iceberg, but there's so much that goes underneath of that. I guess within the space, all those different parts that have to work, all that supply chain to deliver the experience. What are some of those things that if you don't understand what's happening below the water, that you'd be surprised to hear has to be as cohesive as the end user experience?
Yeah, and even in auto, right? I think now that we kind of have even a better view into it. When I say we, consumers or people who don't have an idea, it is also a full spectrum. There are manufacturers and products that are fully built in the U.S. But maybe ship some parts from outside. There are manufacturers who bring parts from outside but assemble it in the U.S. But there are also very few, but truly cars being brought in completely from offshore. So it's a full spectrum. But now, of course, the tariffs will have impact. I think you mentioned in the beginning, will have impact on all, but the impact will vary based on what are they trying to ship and what the future will hold. When you come back to consumers, there are a few things they expect. Of course, like you said, it's a little bit more than phones, but when you put the abstract piece, consumers normally don't care where the parts come from, or where the cars come from. But they do expect a few things. They do expect, great experience. They love a great car. Some people, focus quite a bit on the looks. Some people focus quite a bit on the functionality. Some people want both. And safety, very important, right? As you know, we put our lives in there, and we we sit inside a car and drive. So safety is quite key. And today's world, people also, the third thing I feel is so important, because our lives are, we don't have a wall between what we use, how we expect things to be, in our kitchen or home, bedroom, versus when we now walk into a car, we expect a similar, like a touch screen or whatever, maybe or may not, easier experience. It's touch screen or combination of touch screen and buttons, whatever it is. People's expectations are very, they're transformed from one place to other, from their home to, their commute to their work. So there is a specific expectation on experience, what people feel or consumers feel. This is how my experience should be. It should be easy. It should be simple. I have to have there are people who want to have a kind of a more, I would say, relaxed feeling when they drive the car. Like, the car should be easy for me so that that's a place where I could, do whatever I want, listen to music or take a conference call, do whatever I want. So those three factors are quite important. And with what has happened in the tariffs, there is definitely still uncertainty. I know even today there is I saw I'm sure you closely follow the news on what has changed, but it looks like things haven't changed much from an automotive perspective. But we work with dealers and manufacturers all the time. They're all working towards finalizing what, but they have a bigger picture on what original forecast was, but they're also assessing how the tariffs true impact, because it kind of varies every day, because when there is an implementation, they get ready to, but when there is a pause for some reason, it could be legal or it could be many other reasons. They're like, oh, what do I do now? Do I change my forecast? That's the biggest issue in the industry that everyone is facing. It's not, while tariffs itself there are impacts, but more than that, it's the certainty is what people are even more expecting. Okay, tell me whether it's 10% or 15%, but at least tell me what it is so that I can go do my plan. Good operators always have a plan A and plan B and say, okay, where do I go take this impact? Be it in my margins, or do I increase my price? There are variations that they could do, but once they know it's certain, then they can adjust their forecast and adjust their plans on how to go to market with that.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, we had the pandemic and there was a supply chain disruption. The talk of the tariffs obviously causes concern that there could be a supply chain disruption. If any vendor in that supply chain decides it's not worth it for them to pay the tariffs to import, that will cause a ripple. I guess when it comes to the industry and you look at supply chain, is there any insulation? I guess, was there any learnings from the COVID and pandemic times in terms of supply chain disruptions, and what can possibly be applied if there is one with the tariffs?
Actually, that's a great point and real world experience what we went through. I can tell you, I can of course speak for our manufacturers or dealers. They're all partners whom we work with. But what I've learned from the conversation is definitely tons of learnings. They all went through massive amount of pain with supply chain impact and not enough inventory. It turned out to be positive because the demand was higher than the supply. So of course, price flexibility and margin increase was there. So that was the positive side effect of it. But there was a massive pain that they can't even cater to demand, because if you see the number of cars sold, the inventories dropped, number of cars sold drastically dropped by several millions. If you see automotive industry, I don't know if you know the statistics, the 50-year trend on an average is close to 15 million new cars sold. Right, it's everything from sedan to SUV, just all the consumer cars, not including the heavy vehicles or trucks or used cars. That varied. It went all the way, up to 19, close to almost 20 million in peak when supplies were like free flowing, seamlessly going and increased, and it hit bottom. I would say even somewhere around 9-10 million during the recession periods. I think it was around 12 million during COVID period, somewhere around that, right? It's on the low end, quite a bit low end on the supply side. So now there is a lot of learnings, and I know based on the conversations, many of our manufacturing partners have taken a lot of steps to do backup plans, and they also brought in quite a bit more reliable supply chain in-house within the US, as well as countries that are a lot more reliable compared to what they went through in the past. Importing from China and others as well. But yes, there is a lot of learnings. I don't know if that learnings and the implementation of alternative supply chain plans and routes Is it 100% foolproof for what is happening today? Maybe not, but definitely in a much better place than how it was in 2020.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, obviously, um, two different circumstances and certainly two different learnings applied there
Yeah.
as well. When you actually have, I think I had somebody on from CarMax on the show a couple of years ago, and they mentioned they have 50% of all used car data is in their database. I was blown away. I thought that's a phenomenal stat. When you look at the supply chain, the dealers, the brand, down to the consumer, there's a lot of data. I mean, I don't know how much data was captured before, how much is now being captured because we have a modern system like Tekion that can provide that. Where are we in the scope of having that data so that AI can actually be actionable for, all the way through the life cycle so the consumer benefits from it?
Yeah, it's another great question, right? So, um, my view is there's a lot of data that is available. There is also a lot of data that is quite fragmented. Where what I mean by that is you can connect all the dots of a consumer journey or a consumer information, yet you leave pieces out of it. Unfortunately, if you leave the important piece of it, then you can't, potentially forecast or predict. You never can predict 100%. It's very, very rarely you could predict 100%, but even getting closer. Today, I feel it's fragmented mainly because of even system and data capabilities in the past. I know it for a fact because, as I mentioned to you already, many of the automotive retail systems are quite old, quite antiquated. It comes from so many sources. You have lead gen engines. You have, of course, search engines, lead generation engines. Then what people typically call so far has been quite successful digital retailing because it's only one piece of the shopping journey. And then you have digital, this literally the selling of the cars, the whole buy flow of a car, right? And then you have all the transactional information coming from that, consumer applying for lease or a loan or what is their cost of the loan. There are so many factors through that whole journey. And then there is after sales, of course, how many times they're servicing and all of those. That data is quite disconnected. There are players who patch it together, a lot of hard work they put in. I can't speak for CarMax, but the good thing is they are a central player, so they probably have a better capability, I guess, at least for the used car space. But all other, if you see, there is a massive amount of fragmentation, and everyone I know who does something with it reasonably okay jump through massive amount of hoops to patch things together and try to predict to a reasonable level. I'm not saying it is bad, but I feel it can be significantly better. Like you said, a modern data platform, on top of it, you have AI capabilities, can be extremely powerful to deliver what the consumer is looking for. As we all know, consumer behavior is also potentially constantly will be shifting. The systems that deliver need to be catering to that consumer behavior as well, right? You need to, one is predict, second, you also need to follow the consumer to deliver what they're looking for. What I mean by that is, yeah, people will be, already querying for car options in ChatGPT, right? That is happening, whether we like it or not, it is happening. Consumers would do that. So now how is it going to evolve? Because ChatGPT is probably getting one portion of the information, but it's not the complete information. So now how do you seamlessly connect? And we are very excited at Tekion because like you pointed out, fortunately, we started from ground up as a very modern tech stack, centralized data platform, centralized tech stack. And then we started early days itself. We started machine learning that evolved into AI. Now we are doing generative AI with all of the business context built into it, right? So data, yeah, it's great to build AI, but it can be extremely powerful, the data that has the business context built into it. Then you generate AI, it's even more powerful to cater to business workflows because otherwise you could do very standard stuff like chat, conversations. Okay, build me a video based on this. Yeah, you can do that. But when you convert that into complex business workflows, you need to have a lot more contextual information built in. And we are, Quite excited about how we have built the tech platform. So exponentially, we can continue to scale from where we are today and where we can be in the future. So today, if you think about Tekion as we're a young company, you can think about 10% of the automotive transactions going through our platform, approximately. And that number keeps growing.
As I'm listening, I have a lot of health tech founders, CEOs on as well. And listening to some of the problems within healthcare of just basic administrative, somebody makes an appointment, they come back, you have 10% of automotive, component within the Tekion. I was just thinking the room for improvement with where AI and the data set has to be tremendous, especially if you're selling a car. And if I never come back for service, that's got to be very bad for a dealership's business model.
Yeah.
And understanding how to actually get me to come back, right? Obviously, without that data, I mean, that's got to be a competitive advantage
Yeah.
when people are shopping from one dealership to another. Because right now, most people just assume it's all commodity. If I get a better price here, a better price there, it doesn't matter. I know with Tesla, with Lucid, I can't compete. The prices are set. But with everyone else, I can play one off of each other. I want the best price. I don't know if I'm getting it. When it comes to this competitive advantage, what would that look like? What would it look like? And I guess if we just put ourselves in the shoes of like a dealership trying to provide that best experience, actually just maybe even through the buying process, what does that look like?
Excellent question. Very thoughtful, and very practical as well, right? So I think you kind of pointed that out very right. And there is a number I can attach to it. What I mean by that is selling a car is very low margin. You probably know by that already, right? It's on the much lower side. It's 2%, 3%, maybe 5%, depends on what car you sell. Luxury cars tend to have a slightly higher margin. Of course, if you get to all the way to a Ferrari, it's much higher margin. But if you think about a consumer car, margins are very low. But for after sales, there is a very high margin. When customers come back for servicing their car and anything else like accessories and parts and ongoing, that's a significantly high margin to the level of 50, 60, 70%, or could be even more in cases. So reality is for a real business, selling car is just start. And people who strong operators with medium to long-term thinking, understand this really well. When people focus on short-term, I need to get rid of this inventory car because it's just sitting on my lot. Doesn't matter what I do, I just sell this out, right? It's not long-term thinking. Of course, you need to meet your numbers. But this is where it shifts from truly pricing to experience. And you're absolutely right. Where price becomes a true competitive is because when, like you said, when consumers don't care about, not all the time they don't care about experience, but the point is they kind of come to a conclusion, you know what, I'm going to get a crappy experience anyway. Let me go to where I get the cheapest price, right? So that's kind of the mindset. And I've heard this from people firsthand. What we are working to transform, and we really show, Amir, you could go to our website to see some really big testimonials. We run the world's largest dealership today, who really focus on every single consumer. You would see high-end Ferrari dealerships raving about how much it has changed consumer experience. So now experience matters. And I know we refer to Apple, but it's an easy one for people to relate to. As you know, well, until Apple, people didn't consider paying a phone $100 or maybe $50 was the highest people would pay. Maybe it was free. It many times comes with your phone connectivity. But that changed because there was a better experience. People felt that's the experience I love. So now bringing that to automotive, and you mentioned Tesla, same thing, experience. We could deliver, which we are delivering already. When you deliver a significantly better experience for a consumer, then there is a higher possibility for them, and significantly higher possibility for them to come back. See, price is something they may remember today, they may remember tomorrow, they may remember next week. But beyond that, this is not something I am saying. You may have heard there's a recording in social media. Warren Buffett talks about experience is something people don't forget normally, especially highly, very positive experience or very negative experience is people something almost never forget during lifetime. They would know, if I got a super positive experience, I always remember about that, right? So now that's exactly what we are focusing on. So we are through the platform, we are also educating our dealers saying, if you think about long term, deliver a smooth consumer experience, transparent as well. But that's another thing, as you may know already, existing in the industry. People feel that it's not transparent. They just don't know what they are paying for. They may think they got a best deal until they, speak to someone else the next day. They got like $100 less. They're going to be feeling miserable. Oh my God, I thought I got a great deal. The point is that can all be stumped if they get a significantly better experience. And that I feel technology can enable people so that it's not 100% dependent on people. So technology can bring that connectivity and say, you know what, I got a great experience. Even if someone tells me tomorrow, but they got $100 less, I can feel like, you know what, it's worth for me to pay that $100 because I got a great experience and I can go back to that dealer tomorrow because I love working with that dealership. Everything was transparent. I can see it in my phone. They sent me videos, they sent me pictures, they sent me the breakdown of the pricing. You improve trust, that automatically, brings in retention and loyalty, right? Then they're going to come back for service. They're going to spend more because the point here, consumers have proved again and again in some of these examples we talked about, be it Apple, be it Tesla, I am okay. They're openly told, opening up their wallet, saying, I'm okay to spend money as long as I like the product and I like the experience. Does that make sense?
100%. I'm a big believer of the reason people go back to Starbucks and they pay $5, $6, $7
Yeah.
for a caffeinated beverage or the beverage of choice is the experience is what the whole thing. And I think you brought
Yeah.
up obviously Apple, Tesla. I do think experience, and it's interesting. We actually just went through the process of getting a car, and we actually noticed that the dealer went out of their way a little bit differently. My wife was like, "What's going on? Why are they so attentive? Like this is different." And everything you're mentioning right now, and it had been a couple of years since the pandemic, since we had, it all kind of makes sense now because obviously as we are seeing that transactional nature have less value, and even for the dealership, they were treating this as a transactional. I just want to secure this deal. It doesn't matter. I want to get the car off my lot, and then I'll deal with it after. I think
Exactly.
it's become a product of both sides viewing it as a transaction, and that's probably one of the hardest when you have a two-sided marketplace and both sides view the transactional nature of what's happening. So I do think it's very interesting the things you're mentioning and the opportunity to use data to kind of shift that in the
Yeah.
mindset.
There is one more thing I would want to add, and I think you'll appreciate this. The thing is, right, even in experience, this is where technology, like I think you mentioned, data and AI can provide more insights. What I think is a good experience may not be a best experience for you, right? For example, I'll tell you, dealers do spend, sometimes it shows when it's transactional, consumers don't like it. Someone has to start one way, right? If at least as a business, if you start, then consumers, might, I would say, will change and buy in to say, okay, they truly want my business and they are thinking long term. So you know what I need to give. Yes, there are one or two people who will be transactional. That's fine. But the subtle difference I want to make with data is, you know what? It's not that dealers don't spend. They spend a lot of money in having, very fancy, espresso coffee machines,
Hmm.
and you will see donuts and stuff constantly delivered at dealerships. But the reality is, some people appreciate it. Some people said, "Don't, I don't care. My time is more precious. I don't need donuts. I don't need espresso. You know, be straight to the point. Give me what I'm looking for. Get me out of here. My time is more valuable." Isn't that right? Because not everyone appreciates its experience is not the same for everyone. It varies person to person. This is where I feel technology can give the insights to the business people, saying that, by the way, Amir's preference or potential thought of experience is different. He wants transparency, he values time, get me out. So to him, don't try to give him coffee, don't try to make him stay, don't try to give him donuts. He doesn't want to be, treated special, but the moment you're transparent and create trust, he will feel special already. So I think that variation I feel is important, and I feel we continue to give more insights there. And enable the customer or dealers, the businesses, to adjust accordingly based on personalized experience, in simple words.
I love it. Jay, that's fantastic. How exciting to be able to see change from the ground up in an industry. It's an exciting place to be. I'm sure I did not ask you every question possible, and I'm sure we have plenty that we could cover. If somebody does have a question, they want to learn more, how can they do that?
Yeah, of course. Tekion.com, www.tekion.com. It has all kinds of information, including our products overview. It is cool, comprehensive. I mean, from a high level overview, it's still tip of the iceberg. If you're interested in learning more, absolutely feel free to send an email. You can directly send an email to me, jay@tekion.com, or we have support@tekion.com, press@tekion.com. But just tekion.com is the one source to go.
Absolutely fantastic. I definitely appreciate your time and thank you for being on the show.
Enjoyed the conversation, Amir. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. That's it for this episode. Be back again, different guest, different topic. Until then, two things. One, I really love the conversation around understanding how you can bring in technology, AI, data within an industry that's potentially been underserved and is trying to really level up to be at an area and maturity that probably rivals what they sell. They sell very advanced cars. Every car nowadays has a full computer on board, and I think it's interesting to see the industry shift. And Jay walked us through all those nuances. We talked a little bit about supply chain. We talked about how the experience and some of the other models are impacting what the expectation is. So please share this episode with somebody else who might benefit from it. I'd really appreciate that. And also like, subscribe, let me know how the show's going for you. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.